Okay, we're good.
Good evening and welcome back to the second portion of our Town of Shelburne's Public Information Center. This one's for our water wastewater servicing master plan, our environmental assessment. With us tonight we have Ian Callum and Terrence Cole from SBA and Associates, our town engineers, as well as Steve Weaver from GSP Group, our town planner. I'll turn it now over to Ian. He can run us through a presentation.
All right, just sharing my screen here. Thanks very much, Jim. So as Jim was saying, this presentation here tonight is the first public information center for Shelburne's water, wastewater master servicing plan, class environmental assessment. And really what the purpose of this Class EA is to look at all of the town of Shelburne's infrastructure around water and wastewater, and to plan for the future to make sure that they have the sufficient infrastructure in place and the plans to make sure that that infrastructure is there for the town to meet its needs, in this case for the next 20 years. So in terms of the format of this presentation, we'll essentially be walking first through water and then through all issues wastewater in that order. So this being the first public information center, this EA is has commenced, and we've done some study work, but this is the first time that we've really reached out to the public to update you on where things are at with this study and to solicit your input and feedback. We've issued a notice of commencement, which is just the formal notification that kicks off the environmental assessment process. And then we've had our engineering team in the background since then, looking at evaluating what infrastructure the town has in terms of water and wastewater, what are going to be the future needs as the town of Shelburne grows around water and wastewater, and to identify any potential shortcomings that need to be addressed through some planning work. So that's really where we're at right now. As you can see here, the PIC1 feedback on alternative solutions, and all that means is in the Class EA process, and I'll explain this a little bit more. There's 5 phases, but for this one, for a master servicing plan here, we're following a Schedule B type EA, which means that we really are only looking at phase 1, phase 2, and phase 5 of the Class EA process. So as you can see here on this graphic here, you start with coming up with a problem statement or an opportunity statement. Then you work through what are the different alternative solutions to addressing that problem statement or opportunity statement. You identify after identifying those solutions, you look at what the natural environment and social and economic environment is like. You identify the impact of all the different alternatives, and you kind of weigh them through a weighted analysis, typically, to come up with a preferred alternative solution. And that's kind of the stage where we're at here. We've kind of have draft alternative solutions that we've come up with through our engineering analysis. And really the point of tonight is to present that to the public and to get input back so that we can incorporate your input into the determination of preferred alternative solutions. Once we're through that, then we will be selecting a preferred alternative solution. And then we wrap up all the assessment that we've done and all the input, the public input, into a project file. And then that completes the EA process with issuing a notice of completion, and then we can move forward towards implementation. So for us to get started in this work, we looked at some planning considerations, and really the big driver in terms of planning considerations was the growth of the town of Shelburne. And the town of Shelburne is forecasted by 2041 to reach a population of 15,000. It's quite a high level of growth. This slide here just shows some of the proposed developments that are planned, and the amount of residential units associated with each of those. And those basically, once we added up all of those known planned developments, helps us forecast the need for things like water and wastewater infrastructure for the town. So beginning with water, we came up with the following problem opportunity statement, that being that the town of Shelburne needs to update the 2003 master servicing plan to ensure that infrastructure is in place to provide a safe supply of water that meets the town's needs for the next 20 years. And based on background information, we drilled a little bit deeper into that statement in the following slides here. So for water, we broke it down into a number of different categories in terms of water infrastructure. Those categories being water supply, water quality, water storage and fire flow, and water distribution and demand. In terms of water supply, sort of a mini problem opportunity statement that we came up with is that the current water supply cannot meet the current or future maximum day flow needs for the town of Shelburne. Now, instead of dealing with that in the master servicing plan EA, that is being dealt with concurrently through another water supply EA that the town is currently working their way through that Schedule B Class EA process for that to look at how they can best meet the town's water supply needs for the next 20 years. So that's how that one is being taken care of. In terms of water quality, there's a number of different projects underway, some upgrades to well 1 and 3 water supply wells that exist in the town currently. And once those upgrades are complete, there are no foreseen water quality issues that would need to be addressed to meet the town's water quality needs, water supply needs rather, for the next 20 years. For water storage, the town has basically had a new tower commissioned and is working towards commissioning a new water storage tower. And once that tower is commissioned, there won't be any issues with regards to water supply. Water distribution and demand, basically all the pipes that get water from supply to your homes and to industrial users. And basically, based on our analysis and our engineering work to date, we're looking at replacing some sections of pipe that are known for frequent leakage or breakage. There's some pipes, iron pipes, and some pipes that are greater than 50 years old or we don't have a recorded age for, that we're recommending continuing to monitor, and continuing a program of flushing water mains, testing valves, and hydrants that the town, and that's a program that the town is already doing and just needs to be continued. All of these activities here are considered from an environmental assessment point of view as Schedule A, Class EA, pre-approved activities, so they don't need to go through basically the steps that we saw on the previous slide. in terms of water supply production wells, this map here shows where those wells are located within the town and just outside of the town boundaries in the case of wells 7, 8. And the red line here on this map really is just to show the watershed divide between the Nottawasaga watershed and the Grand Valley watershed to the west there. So we've got wells, water supplies, PW1, PW3. There's wells 5 and 6, which are located immediately adjacent to each other, as are wells 7 and 8. And I'm not sure if you can see it really well on this one. The triangle in sort of the middle there, just under well 3, is the existing water tower. So in terms of work that's currently ongoing at some of the production wells, there was an air entrainment issue, so some air bubbles getting into the water at well 1, and that issue has now been resolved. The town and Aqua and ourselves, SBA, have been working on a flushing plan for the chlorine contact tank to resolve some turbidity issues. And that well is scheduled to be back online this summer after confirming a sustainable pumping rate, which is done through a 72-hour pump test. Well, PW3 is scheduled to be back online next summer following some water treatment improvements and adding a new well pump with connection to a VFD, a variable frequency drive. And also some absorption filters for arsenic remediation and a UV system are also going to be added there for treatment. At wells PW 7 and 8, the ongoing EA, the water supply EA that I spoke of a little earlier, and some source water protection work that goes alongside with that concurrently, those studies are being undertaken to determine if those 2 wells can be pumped concurrently. Right now, either well 7 or well 8 can be operational, but with the other one acting as a backup. But the intent is to determine whether those 2 wells can be pumped sustainably with minimum impact to adjacent landowners and environmental features. And if that were to be the case and that can be demonstrated and those wells are to go forward, there would be an additional well 9 that would then be installed in 2023 as a backup for those wells 7 and 8. So the graph here is basically looking at the average day flow, the maximum day flow, and how much water as of 2023 is being produced. So you can see here that the max day flow exceeds how much water is being produced, somewhere around 2037. The maximum day flow will exceed how much water is currently able to be supplied. So we are currently undertaking that Class EA that I mentioned earlier to see the best means. And you can see just on the bottom right, the estimated sustainable pumping rates of all those, of all the current wells. And that results in a total sustainable pumping rate of 7,560 cubic meters per day. That would be that flat line just under 8,000 shown on the graph there. And that demonstrates basically that, although be able to meet the average daily flow for those maximum day flows where more water is being used, the town won't be able to meet that demand going forward, and additional planning will need to be done. Like you can see, though, that is conditional when you look at PW 7 and 8 there, producing 37.8 liters per second. That is contingent on those two wells being able to pump concurrently. So that is included in this analysis here, that those wells are able to produce concurrently. And that's the only reason why we're able to get up to that 7,560 cubic meters per day number. Moving over to wastewater, the town of Shelburne, the problem opportunity statement that we came up for wastewater was that the town of Shelburne needs to update the 2003 master servicing plan to ensure that infrastructure is in place to provide adequate transport and treatment of wastewater to meet the town's needs for the next 20 years. And similar to what we did for water, we did break that down by some categories in the following slide. So this map here is just highlighting, indicating the location of the current water pollution control plant in the town of Shelburne. The water pollution control plant was built in 1981, and subsequently it was upgraded to an average day flow of 3,420 cubic meters per day of treatment and a peak rate of 8,921 cubic meters per day. So this translates to a population of approximately 10,058 based on 340 liters per day per person, which is the historical rate that's been observed in the town. And with a current estimated population of just under 10,000, I think it's safe to say that that plant is at capacity and unable to meet the current projected growth demands of which would look like 15,000 people in the town of Shelburne around 2041. Meeting future demand requires an average day flow capacity of 5,100 cubic meters per day and a max day capacity of 12,750 cubic meters per day. The water pollution control plant also requires a treatment system upgrade to be able to meet the future effluent quality requirements established through a study called an assimilative capacity study that was completed in 2020. And the assimilative capacity study is a modeling study that is used to predict how effluent limits at different concentrations are going to be diluted and assimilated into the water course that the effluent is discharged to. And that study helped set the effluent limits that the current upgrades to the water pollution control plant are being designed to. And that study was approved by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So similar to water, we've kind of broken down that larger problem opportunity statement into some subcategories, and we've also developed problem opportunity statements for each of those. So the categories that we're looking at for wastewater are wastewater treatment, pumping stations, and trunk line capacity. So in terms of wastewater, the current wastewater treatment plant is at capacity, as we've sort of alluded to earlier, and cannot meet the needs of planned growth for the town of Shelburne. And also a treatment system upgrade is required to meet the needed changes to the effluent concentrations. So for that, a Schedule C Class EA is currently being undertaken, and the third Public Information Center for that was also occurring tonight at 6:30, a little earlier. A presentation for that, in case you missed it, is also available on the town's website as a YouTube video that you can view if you're interested. So for the category of pumping stations, we looked at all the different pumping stations and whether they're able to meet the needs of the town, and determined that the Fiddle Glen pumping station will not be able to manage planned flows. That would I guess figuring out how best to address that would require a Schedule A+ Class EA process, which actually means that it doesn't have to follow all those steps, the 5 steps that we looked at on an earlier slide. So it wouldn't require formally a process, but notification, public notification would be required to keep everyone updated as to what is happening around that. And the next step would be to do a feasibility study for the pumping station upgrade. For trunk line capacity, some of the trunk lines that carry wastewater from their source, from homes and industrial users to the water pollution control plant, are at capacity, with some additional lines that would be brought above the threshold there of being at capacity with the planned growth that we're forecasting. And to address that, similarly, would also be a Class EA, a Schedule A+ Class EA process would need to occur with no formal EA documentation, but public notification. So for the town of Shelburne, basically there's a lot of information on this slide, but really the big pieces to note from it are the dark blue, the green, and the pink areas, which are different catchment areas, which are served by a pumping station that then pumps the wastewater from those catchment areas to the water pollution control plant. Sorry, the other one is the yellow one there. So we've got the Fiddle Glen catchment area in dark blue, the Highland catchment area in green, and the Fieldgate catchment area in yellow. And the remaining areas within the town of Shelburne flow through gravity and don't require a pump station to push the wastewater through the pipes to the water pollution control plant. So when we took a look at the different pumping stations in the town, as we indicated earlier, you can see here that the current capacity of the Fiddle Glen pumping station is 110 liters per second. And with the planned future demand of 149 liters per second with the development of the Flato phases 1 to 4, then subsequent development of external Flato lands, you're not able to meet that planned growth with the 110 current capacity. And then that's further exacerbated with the full build out capacity, which is going to drive things up to 170 liters per second. For the other ones, you can see for Highland, you've got a current capacity of 36.93 liters per second, and for Fieldgate of 24.89, and those are able to meet future demand. So for wastewater collection, this map here shows existing conditions, and without considering future demand that'll be driven by planned growth, some sanitary sewer sections are already near or over capacity. So you have some orange sections here that show for the southeast trunk line, some sanitary sewer sections that are over 80% full, but within 100%. So, and inspections are just currently being undertaken, or just finished up to verify these bottlenecks that we're looking at here. And once we add future demand from planned growth, you've got some sections here shown in yellow for the Fiddle Glen trunk line and for the northeast trunk line that would be pushed over 100% capacity. And then you have 3 sections here, one for the South Lane trunk line and 2 for the Franklin trunk line that are within that 80% to 100% capacity, which is higher than we would like to see. And then we also, as part of this EA, sort of on top of the water and wastewater, we also looked at some stewardship opportunities that the town could undertake. And starting in 2002, started working in partnership with the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority to start implementing the Boyne River Stewardship and Monitoring Plan, which was developed also in partnership with the Conservation Authority. And this plan focuses on maintaining the cold water habitat in the Boyne River and improving the aquatic habitat there. So we talked a little bit in the earlier presentation tonight that the water pollution control plant discharges into the Besley Drain, which then has its confluence with the Boyne River. And so some of these opportunities here are just really to enhance the habitat in that and to protect the aquatic habitat in the Boyne River there. And some examples of some of the projects that are being considered there are tree planting, removal or redesign of some in-stream ponds, which I guess the issue with the in-stream ponds really is that they heat up the water a lot quicker than flowing water, and therefore can affect that cold water habitat that the fish like, that is necessary for cold water species which inhabit the Boyne River. And also working with farmers to avoid animals entering the river is another stewardship opportunity that we're working on. So in terms of next steps, we'll be considering any input received from public or agencies as a result of this meeting here tonight. And we'd be working that into our final EA report, which we're forecasting wrapping up in the early summer of 2022. And then we would be filing a notice of completion early in the summer of 2022 as well, which would complete this EA process. And with that, I'm not sure if anybody is on the line to ask questions, but if not, if you're viewing this not live and on YouTube, I would welcome you to forward any questions to myself, either directly or through the town. And we will direct that question to whoever it needs to be directed to get you the answers that you're looking for. So feel free to continue to ask questions, even if you weren't able to attend this presentation in person. And with assuming we're not going to get any questions here, that concludes our presentation for tonight.